Today I'm going to show you how to create and launch a Lightsail instance from your AWS Management Console. So once you're fully logged in, go to All Services and the section, an option under Compute should be Amazon Lightsail. So click this. This would open the Lightsail Management Console in a new browser tab. This console is essentially an overview or a dashboard to monitor, manage, and otherwise directly interact with your Amazon Lightsail instances. To create a Lightsail instance, click the large orange button which says Create Instance. Now, clicking Create Instance can't actually create an instance on the fly since some essential configuration parameters still need to be decided. At the top of this Create an Instance page, you'll see the option to select a location. We're going to stick with the default option, which is US West 2A. However, depending on where you are situated or where your intended users are situated, you may want to change this instance location to better suit yourself or your users. We're going to select the Linux platform. There are two options, is Linux and Windows. For the purposes of this demo, we're going to select the Linux platform, and we're going to select a blueprint. Now, a blueprint is a set of ways to create and launch your instance. For example, one set of blueprints include a development stack to be installed on your Lightsail instance at time of creation. So there's the option to create your LAMP stack, your mean stack, your Django stack, etc. Or another popular example is to select WordPress, for example, if you're using Lightsail to run a small website. For the purposes of this demo, we would be using OS only, and I'm selecting Ubuntu 20.04 since this is the flavor of Linux that I'm most familiar with. Scrolling down a bit, there's the option to add a launch script. So in this case, I'm going to add a small launch script which updates all packages installed in Ubuntu. So for that, I'm going to use apt-get-y so that it does not ask for confirmation and update. Now this will change depending on your particular flavor of Linux. For example, Fedora may use a different package manager such as Yum or DNF. We're going to leave the default SSH key pair as the default. Now, an SSH key or secure shell key is comparable to a 617-digit long password, and this is specific to the RSA encryption. Each SSH key comes in pairs, a private and a public. A username tells a remote server, so in this case your Lightsail instance, which public key to use to authenticate a user, and the remote server uses the public key to encrypt a random challenge message which is sent back to the client and is decrypted using the private key on the client system. So this is then combined with a previously arranged session ID and sent back to the server. If the sent back key matches the message the server sent out, then the client is authenticated. So that's how SSH works. But for now, we're going to use the default. We're also going to select an instance plan. So Lightsail provides pricing by the month, by memory configurations, by processing or compute power, storage, or via networking. For now, we're going to leave this as the default 3.5 USD, and as this is part of the free tier. In order to identify my instance, I'm going to say Ubuntu 1, and note that all of your Lightsail instances must have unique names. You can name them appropriately depending on their use. I'm also going to add a key value tag in order to be able to group and identify various Lightsail instances. So in this case, my key is OS and the value is Linux. As I scroll down, I'm going to click Create Instance. Now this may take a while depending on where you are, etc. And when you create an instance, what you do is you essentially tell Lightsail to start creating an instance. So currently your Lightsail instance is in a pending state and it will eventually transition to starting and then started. In order to connect to your instance, I'm going to show you how to download an SSH key and remote into your running server instance. In order to do this, go to Account, SSH keys and download the SSH key associated with the region within which you launched your instance. In my case, that was Oregon, US West 2. Click download and save it somewhere where you can easily find it. In this case, I'm saving it to my desktop. For an SSH key to work on some operating systems, you need to change the permissions for that particular key. So in this case, I am going to go to my desktop, open a terminal, and navigate to the desktop. We're going to use the chmod command in order to modify these permissions, and the code 600, which tells the operating system that only the current user is able to modify and use the key. In order to do that, we select the key afterwards, and this command has to be run with elevated privileges, in this case sudo. Now that the permissions have been modified, we're going to use the SSH client, so SSH-I, and using the key that we just downloaded, so star.pem, and now we have to specify a username and a public IP address. In order to find this username and public IP address, we go back to our Amazon Lightsail homepage, navigate to the instance we just launched, and we're going to click the instance. Here we can see that the public IP is listed and the default username is Ubuntu. Now to connect to this, we're going to use username at the public IP and click enter. Accept. And now we are successfully remotely connected to your Amazon Lightsail instance. We can view a few things about the system. For example, basic OS information. In this case, we can see that it is a Ubuntu 20.04 system. We can also view all of the hardware in our system. So, for example, sudo lshw shows all the system hardware. And if we scroll up a bit, we can actually view some things about our CPU, RAM, etc. For example, we have 512 megabytes of system memory. We scroll up a little bit more, and we can see that our CPU is actually a Xeon E5 class, and it is currently running at 2400 megahertz. This takes me to the end of the demo of launching your Amazon Lightsail instance.